Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Where we cover everything Dynamics, great and small. Welcome to fall, Bart. Official fall.
It is officially here. We have passed the solstice.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
sorry, the equinox. The equinox.
Yes, solstice was in June. This is the
Yes,
vernal
this is the
equinox, I believe.
equinox.
So, yeah.
Right, right.
So, yeah, heading into it. It's like we live in Minnesota. It's supposed to be 90s this weekend, which is insane for October. Just doesn't happen here. So,
For sure.
so it's extended summer. So that's kind of the joke on us. So, which kind of brings us to jokes. What do you got for me, Bart?
All right, all right. So a little thematic.
Yep.
So why did the apple try to cross the road but not quite make it?
Something cider, applesauce, rolling. I don't know. What is it, Bart?
Ran out of juice.
That is super bad. So,
Hey,
yeah.
apple fall theme,
I was like, I was
whatever.
going to like the cider, the juice. Okay, whatever. Yeah, okay. So here, let's go from the
I'm
magic.
sure this is going to be lots
Go.
better.
Oh no, it's like this is gonna be awful, right? It's gonna be awful. Okay, well let's see. It's like Did you hear about the guy who invented the knock knock joke?
Who's there? I don't know.
Oh, he won the Nobel Prize. That's awful.
Wow,
that's
the
terrible.
Nobel Prize. All right.
All right. Let's see some content here. There's got to be better. Not good jokes this week, Bart. Yeah.
All righty. Well, we've got a month's worth, so this could take just a little bit. I'm going to try to be fast.
Yep.
So for those of you who maintain your Center of Excellence starter kit, the September update is out. Go grab it and update yours. If you use Power Pages, there is a new capability for the search algorithm that gets surfaced on your Power Pages that lets it be an AI-powered search that allows it to not only kind of display all the results, but a summary of those results so that if there's a long response, that it can kind of give you those nice summaries that are a little easier to consume. If you're a professional developer, you can absolutely use the Search API to blend some of this generative capability with the summarization with the specific results and things like that. So we didn't take capability away as long as you're ready to kind of get in and do a little of the patching up yourself. In Dataverse, we took some pretty major steps forward in all the things that we did to enhance the auditing capability. So I'm going to kind of go through these pretty fast. But the first thing is we are adding audit events for what AI updates as specific things tagged that AI updated that piece of data, not a human. So that is a nice thing to audit. We can audit core business tables that are normally auditable for watching for data change, but there's also security related tables, and we can make sure that we are allowing you to configure security related tables to kind of track compliance and whatever's going on for a security configuration along the way. Option sets are always interesting because in the database, you're pretty much getting like a number tied to an option set most of the time in terms of what gets audited, which makes it kind of hard to do. But we have updated Dataverse to not only give you that option set numeric value for the database entry, but the text label that goes with that value shows up in the audit event too. So you can see what was there from a text value, and we can even show text changes related to the same numeric value over time. So that's another nice thing. In the environment settings app, there is an enhanced view for people who care about looking at the actual summary view of all of the audit stuff instead of just the audit events on a single record. So another nice update. Retention policy has been there for a while. We've now also allowed you to start doing that table by table in terms of managing that storage. If you didn't have the retention set, you have to set it kind of at whatever the longest pole in the tent is for everything, but you can go in and still audit things, but sort of clean those up in tables that you don't need it for as long as your global retention policy says. We also have a separate retention policy for completed system jobs if you want that to be managed a little different than just the audit history of data changes and things like that. Anytime any auditing event actually is tracked inside of Dataverse, where you would consume it from that Power Platform asset, it's also being sent to Purview in the audit event trail so that you can look at it as an administrator who's looking at Purview across all your other Microsoft assets and find all the Dataverse audit events showing up there too. Making sure also that if audit events happen to a masked field, that masking persists into the audit trail for the users where it has been masked in the live data as well, but unmasked if the security role says you're consuming the audit event and you should be able to see it. So all kinds of great stuff that we have done to just make it more secure, more auditable, all the things that are good in security. Dataverse has brought them along. Copilot Studio Kit. If you are using Copilot Studio Kit, it's kind of like the COE Starter Kit, but this is honing in specifically on Copilot Studio functionality, that there is an upgrade to that kit, so make sure you grab it and apply it if you're using it. This was one I almost missed, so I found it this morning. We made some updates in Copilot Studio in the pretty recent past to allow you to flip on advanced real-time protection. And you do that in the PPAC, and you can connect tools like Microsoft Defender to it so that anytime any human decides to interact with one of these agents, it will run it through advanced real-time runtime protection through Defender to try to make sure that whatever is being keyed in looks like it should be a real human and doesn't meet any of the other criteria that Defender would use to try to, protect you and block malicious attempts to do things. So I thought that was a really nice update. Computer use agents are now in preview. So if you're not familiar with computer use agents, they allow the AI model to use computer vision to watch what's going on a hosted PC and to just allow you to prompt it and tell it, I want you to go find the download link for whatever it is and download this thing onto, my downloads folder on this machine that I'm having you control. And it will figure out where on the page it needs to navigate to find the download link and click the button and put it where you tell it without you having to, define XY coordinates and all the things that RPA has sort of allowed you to do, but made very fragile because anytime any change was ever made, it would break the RPA scripts. But now, because we're just prompting AI to do it and understand what it needs to do, it can take a lot of those things and make it much more resilient and easier to work with. So play around with this. Another beautiful thing that we recently added to this is just a hosted browser. So this is all something that you enable inside of Copilot Studio because you're adding the prompts and the AI algorithm to do the things. Well, the hosted browser means you don't have to do a machine setup and actually host an entire machine to do things. Now you lose some capability, like if you wanted to download a file, you wouldn't be able to because this is just a hosted browser, not a hosted PC. But if all you need to do is navigate and take action within browser functionality, you can do all of that in this hosted browser. You can store credentials, you can define websites that are not allowed or just specific ones you want to allow the computer use to go to. So you've got a lot of kind of control capabilities all built into that now. Look at the Learn documentation also. There's a lot more detail in it, but this computer use agent's a pretty big deal. In Copilot Studio and other places within Microsoft, Anthropic has now joined the OpenAI models as something that you can just select and work with without having to go out into AI Foundry to add those models in and use the AI Foundry mechanisms, that you can just click, choose, and use the Anthropic models. Now, it's a beautiful thing, and it has, as of today, actually rolled out into the mainstream tenants. You don't have to be in one of the early environments in order to get that now. The one thing that is important to know, and it will prompt you on this, is if you choose an Anthropic model, just know that what happens is Copilot Studio packages up whatever the user has asked for, and it sends that information across the internet. It is still TLS encrypted and all those kind of things, but it leaves the Microsoft security boundary and goes out into the Anthropic world where Anthropic is hosted, runs the AI against whatever that payload had based on how you asked it to behave, and returns that back into the Microsoft ecosystem to, return the results to you. So there's a different posture in the way security works anyway. Whether it's more or less secure, I'm going to let your security folks figure out what they believe in that scenario, but it just works differently so far for Anthropic. Personal developer environments. So we've had this ability for quite a while. If you were ever sort of wanting a little bit of a case study and some documentation on what Microsoft has seen by making the switch from just having everybody land in the default environment and have that be the place to do things, even though it was quite restricted, to landing in their own personal developer environments to do the same thing, that we've got some description of how it was set up, how that all works, what our benefits were, and then just kind of a reminder that you can do the same thing, and it's highly encouraged. So take a look at this if you want to sort of read through and you haven't turned that on yet, why we did it, what the effects were, and how to turn it on for yourself if you want, because I think it's a good thing to do. Another thing we have done fairly recently is AppSource has been for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at least, the place for many people in at least the Dynamics and Power Platform world and many of the M365 services, the place they would go to find apps that were built by independent software vendors that were consumable within the context of all of those other services. So it was a great place to go to find downloadable, sometimes free, sometimes paid things that would enhance the base functionality of Microsoft. Azure was always a completely separate experience that you had to go to the Azure marketplace to do that. And what we have done is brought AppSource and the Azure marketplace together into the Microsoft marketplace now. So it won't be a huge difference in terms of what's available for Power Platform assets right away anyway, but it certainly is nice to have one combined place that everyone looking for a Microsoft beneficial solution can go to figure out if one exists. All right, most of the rest of these are just sort of notifications I found in the Message Center, and I left the Message Center ID available on this one so you can just find it if you didn't notice it. But Copilot credits are going to take over for AI Builder credits within the next year or so. And brand new licensing isn't going to have any AI Builder allocation to it anymore starting next month, I believe. So pay attention to this one. It's nice to know that we're finally standardizing that across Copilot Studio and M365 Copilot and AI Builder, they're all going to consume out of that same pool of Copilot credits now, so that you can just have to invest in one pool of things that you need to allocate and pay attention to. It's just going to take us a little while to sort of churn through what a lot of people already have operationalized with AI Builder before we make that switch final. So pay attention to that one. Another nice new update, I don't think this one was actually in the Message Center. In Copilot Studio, we have had the ability to invoke Model Context Protocol, or MCP servers, for a little while. We were always limited in terms of what Copilot Studio could understand from an MCP server to just the tools definition of that MCP server. We have now updated Copilot Studio to understand both tools and resources from an MCP server. So the resources could be a lot of knowledge type things. So big step forward in being able to leverage MCP capabilities inside of Copilot Studio. So I wanted to make sure and call that out. Hierarchies have been around for model-driven apps for quite some time, and most people would view like an account hierarchy of, this sub company reports to this parent company, and that parent company reports to the overall, global headquarters for whatever the organization is. And that's been there for quite a while. Very nice, visible way to work with data. Well, as of the end of this month, we plan to have a generally available uplift to that capability to allow that hierarchical data to be from multiple tables. So we should be able to see in one view, like how people and organizations relate to each other, or how organizations and their opportunities and their tickets that are tied to those organizations might relate together, or whatever it is that makes sense. We're going to allow you to use data from many different tables in order to bring that together in that hierarchy view. If you use in Copilot Studio the feature where you can configure an algorithm that will watch a folder or set of folders in either SharePoint or OneDrive, and it will sync the files from those folders directly into Copilot Studio so that they are files that exist in the Copilot Studio infrastructure where it has direct indexes of those and takes action on those as, attached files. That we used to have a limitation. I think it was 200 files per agent. It might have been even less than that, but it has recently been updated to allow you up to 1,000 files in those folders that will sync from either SharePoint or OneDrive into Dataverse, and it's kind of constantly monitoring those to make sure that if you update a file or you add a file, it will just add that to your agent as well to be used as knowledge. This doesn't have anything to do with if you actually used the checkbox and the item that says, just make this SharePoint library my knowledge repository. And I do have an M365 Copilot license, so use the semantic index to bring back information. This is not that. They're similar, but it's two different patterns. And all we're talking about here is we've upped the file synchronization algorithm. One last thing. In the Power Platform world anyway, model-driven apps have a header and navigation refresh. And if you make a brand new model-driven app using the Plan Designer, you will just automatically get this refreshed, simplified, modernized header and navigation control. It does not affect ones that are built any other way or existing model-driven apps, at least yet. But if you want to take advantage of the new refresh setting, all you need to do is open your app, go to the settings for it and the features, and just enable the header and navigation refresh, and that will flip it from the legacy version to the refreshed version in that app. And you can check it out, see if you like it, and decide whether you're going to publish it or not. So wanted to call that out as another thing that people ought to at least look at. So that's everything for Power Platform. I'm going to run through the customer engagement stack really quick. So the first thing in customer engagement, and the first two here are actually all about voice capabilities in the contact center world. But we have enabled this capability to do a grammar specification for constrained speech recognition. So like in your IVR, if you ask a question and you only want to allow someone to spit out, a VIN for their vehicle or a serial number, and you have a regis expression that you can use to define that, you can actually constrain this to really listen specifically for only things like, that, or a constrained list of department names or whatever else you might want to do. So if you have a need to use a specific type of grammar like that you're going to define to make it do a more accurate recognition of what somebody's saying, that we now have the ability to let you turn that on in specific use cases. The next one is within our contact center. When you define it to have a voice for your IVR, that you can pick from a whole bunch of different neural voices. We've had that out there for a long time, but in this list now, we have other options that have an HD in them that we're calling HD voices. And it might be an industry term, I'm not really sure, but the HT voices have had a lot of enhancement to try to make sure that they're not only a very high quality sounding voice, but have a lot of variance in their kind of tones, and that they can detect the intents and they can detect kind of the angriness. I don't know. There's a word that's better at describing that than angriness, but it will look at the mood of the speaker and adjust accordingly to try to make sure that it will be a little more realistic, more like a human would do. If someone is, angry or upset or happy, it will sort of mimic them and be a little bit better at being responsive. A couple other quick things. If you didn't notice this one, M365 Copilot and that license for the generic kind of Microsoft 365 Copilot functionality carries with it new capabilities now. That if you have that license, you also now have the license to the Sales Copilot and the Service Copilot. And those both will work with both Dynamics and Salesforce. The service one will actually also work with ServiceNow and Zendesk and things like that. You can also have access to the Finance Copilot, which will work with many different ERP systems, including the Dynamics stack. So, and there's a nice Excel plugin for it. So lots of new capability that just was moved from standalone licenses that used to be like $50 a user a month right into the M365 Copilot license. So no additional licensing is needed if you have that one. So wanted to make sure people knew that. Last thing, our contact center capability is now available in the government community cloud. So if you are a GCC customer, you were never able to use our contact center functionality until recently. So it's there now. Take advantage of it if you're a Gov customer and wants to do a more sophisticated contact center than you had access to in the past. So love to see that leaving and getting out in the GCC. Dan, I think that's all the content I have prepared for this.
Quite a bit
month.
of content. So I have just a few lines here, but there's a lot underneath.
There's a lot in each line. Yeah.
So I wanted to concentrate on just a few things. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about project operations. Let's see, is this sharing? There we go. Project operations a little bit, and then I'll go into cross app, and then a little bit of supply chain. And then I'm not sure if I'll be able to get into what's new and planned in supply chain, kind of like I'm doing for project operations. I may push that off to the next show, but I wanted to give it due diligence, right? Because there's a lot. That's an important one. So let's kick it off with what's new and planned in project operations. So, I've been kind of talking about there's not a lot of functionality that's been put in for the last year, except with then also we got a flurry of things with the integration of the manufacturing stocked integration into the non-stocked resource plan. So that was a big one, but that's actually opening the floodgates for a lot of different things. So I wanted to talk about some of the things that are in the future. So first of all, I've talked about this before, optimized process with agent-led expenses and approval, right? So we have that agent-led, the mobile app, and you can create, submit, and check, checks for policies and expense reports and emails, scans receipts. It does automatic policy validations, right? And it sets rules for approvals on that. So it actually improves the accuracy. So this is GA this month in October. Also, using Copilot enhancements to tailor project status reports. So I don't know about you, Bart, or the audience there, but Copilot has become my big crutch. I use it for everything, writing emails, just like, researching clients, looking for solutions, other things like that. Started doing it for reports too. Now we can actually, we can use Copilot, the reports, the unique requirements for each of the different projects. So this is going to be in March in 26. So we've already done some things in project operations and some generic things. We're actually tailoring that, make it much more bespoke to each of the projects. Also, improvement in usability of the activity approvals agent, right? So this is an AI-driven process for the approvals and project operations, of course, right? Policy docs are being moved from project levels, like the whole level to the project level. So you have a different set of rules for approval on each of the different projects. So you can actually filter at each different project, look for those approvals. It allows you to, exempt things for entries and things like that and being reviewed. So just makes it easier to use in the real world. There's also templates for project status reports. So this be in March also. So you can actually have tailored status reports, right, without repeatedly uploading or reformatting the templates, right? So you can actually accept customer-provided PowerPoints or documents, right, and the templates for each of those status reports. Now it'll detect if this is a known thing, so it's like it'll existing mappings and it'll autofill using AI. If it's unknown, you can actually configure and map those sections, right? And then from that, they'll be known on that. So that's going to be a real nice feature, especially if customers want it, done in their way. A federal government, right, or a defense agency has to do those type of things. The last big, big feature set that's in there is this, like, match credit card transactions, and it's going to be itemized automatically. So, for instance, I travel quite a bit. I think Bark used to, or still do once in a while. But if we have like a hotel bill, yep, a hotel bill, it'll actually itemize that, and it's like, okay, what's the room charges? What's the tax? Where's the meals they actually put on those other things onto that? So that's being previewed as of last month. Will be available in March 26. So some major features. So some updates on this. It's like some other features that have been added. So first of all, we can view approvals with different types of enhancements. I talked about those approvals. It also does things like it actually can do it in a calendar grid, so it's just easier to manage, and highlights the most relevant info using AI with that. Another thing is the integration into from the CE based or the database for based project operations to what used to be called project operations within finance and supply chain, the F&O based or Azure SQL-based system. We use data dual write mostly to go back and forth with this. Well, we're adding more features into this. Including to be able to do a general journal that you can actually put within the in project operations. It'll flow it over to finance and get in that ledger. We can also do like anything in finance, flow back over to the Dataverse, back and forth with that. So that's kind of nice. Nice little feature with time zones. So currently the system, if you actually post something, like these are global operations, if you post something, it'll convert it to Greenwich Mean Time or GMT. And so that's fine, except for you can save it. It might be the next day. Now we want it to actually be agnostic, so that might like have some issues, just like planning material and things like that. It's supposed to be like on the previous day, not on the day that's Greenwich Mean Time, for instance, right? That will also enable purchase orders within their item requirements. Again, that's one of those integrations that's like, so if you have a requirement within the project operations, it'll create a PO, and then it'll check that material availability and then the usage via dual write. So we can actually have that full integration in between the project operation requirement and the planning and the purchasing execution. So we'll get the cost of the receipt, we'll get the materials reservations, it'll be used for master planning, and we'll also see is like if it's costed out correctly on that. So that's kind of nice. We've also invested in investment projects. So this was an old feature within project operations or project accounting, if you will, within the F&O. So you could make a project and then start putting WIP into it, material fees, labor, so on and so forth. That is going to eventually become a fixed asset. So you can actually take that WIP, convert it over to a fixed asset, and then depreciate that across the books, right? And so this way you have this new project classification. You'll be able to get all those transactions, get all the estimates. If you have any contract restrictions on there, that's taken into consideration. And then it'll convert that WIP into that fixed asset, and then exclude things that you can't actually include for that cost of that fixed asset, right? That capital project. Also, we've enabled flexibility when we determine financial dimensions, results. I won't spend any time on that. Time zone is agnostic, also not only for the transactions, but for the resource planning. Talked a little bit about that. We are now enabling beginning balances across opening balance across active projects, and that does historical data, costs, budgets, projects carry over from like an old system to the new system, right? Especially when it crosses years. We also implemented access restrictions for project for the web iframe on that. Let's see here. Here's a nice one right here with the enhancements to the mobile app. So in October of this month, we're going to change the design to enable to create, enable report header justification in the mobile, prevent selections of like parent activity if that's blocked at the at the child level, and change some of the field sizes so it's more easily readable. Now, in November, we're going to add some icons, so it's easy to track those things out by each different category, be able to name the receipt in the mobile app. And on phase 4, we're going to add financial dimensions within the expense mobile on that. Modern architecture for existing legal entities. So we talked about modern architecture. Geez, this is going about 12 to 18 months ago. We've talked about the new modern architecture within the project operations. Now this is going to be for stocked or project deployments. So we're able to do that because we have that integration into stock-based systems, but the inventory, you're able to do that. But one caveat: if you use manufacturing and you have sub-manufacturing orders within that project, it's not available at this time. So just be aware of that. We can also update key fields, projects, with the copy function on that. We can customize the task flow. We can import tasks from other projects. Those are some features that I've been able to add. We enable on-account transactions with project categories. So this allows the posting transactions to different financial accounts instead of just like the same account on that. So it might be categorically different, maybe like using some posting profiles. We also support line discounts and fees in the resource-based deployment. So this can be used for quotes, contracts, and invoices. We're going to calculate revenue recognition for standalone selling price for contract lines. This allows you to calculate contract value separately from the billing milestone. So it's like, okay, contract value of what you have may be different from the time phase and when you're actually going to build those out. Let's see. We enabled configurable time scale on the assignments view, so you can actually look at by by day, by month, by week, or whatever you need to. As you need to get more granular or not. We can delegate project approvals. We've simplified the approval page we talked about. We enabled project fees for journals to support this, subsidiary billing. Import projects on MPP files into existing projects. So we used to be able to do that in the project, the old project accounting module. Now we're gonna be able to do this within the project operations. And then lastly, I think we can split credit card transactions and expense management. So that's just a whole lot easier there. So those are some features within what's planned, and I'll be talking a lot about that over the next few months as these things get released. So let's talk about what's happening new and planned in CrossApp. So there's not a lot, and I've talked about a lot of these already. So first of all, ask your ERP data in natural language queries, so it's like you can just ask it about like production or information or so on and so forth. I'd start out with just the help files that started in February. It's general availability this month. Also, build agents for finance and operations and model context protocol. So this is the standardized protocol across different systems, especially with the F&O or any M365 or any dynamic system. And now it's compliant within D365 finance and supply chain to be able to use all of the Power Apps or the Power Platform components. And then enable support for asynchronous operations for dual write is another feature. So not a ton in cross applications, but we've done a lot of that groundbreaking work earlier. So I'm going to spend just a few minutes to talk about what's new in supply chain. So the big thing on this is what we've done is we've enabled a lot of the QC, QA features within this. So we enabled the quality control with acceptance sampling, right? So this generates acceptance sampling charts, quality associations, and the defects. So these are AQL charts of acceptable quality levels. So if you remember your statistics, if you ever took those in college, right? You have your F test and P test. It's like, okay, based upon to be significantly significant, how many samples or how many tests I have based upon the lot or the population on that. So it'll actually give you those charts and tell you what you need to do. Master planning, this is a big one for me. So we have lean manufacturing and planning optimization. So this allows you to do dynamic Kanbans. So it's like usually Kanbans are pulled by a pull system like that, or if you have a card on that. This one we can use forecasting to generate dynamic Kanbans, which you should anticipate to actually do. So it's kind of a mix of lean and discrete worlds, push and pull manufacturing. And so a lot of our customers are really optimized that, and that's a great feature. We also put catch weights into that. So it's like, so you might have one unit might be 1 pound or 1.1 pound, and another unit might be 1.3 pounds. And so that's a catch weight per unit that it takes into consideration, along with step consumption. So we have, might have different processes like at 100 or 500 or 1,000 on that. A little bit on the message processor, just clean up some of those messages. MES integration, so manufacturing execution system, or like if there's a third party. So I have a customer that makes very high-tech carbon fiber, and they have a very, very complex MES system, which ours didn't really work for them specifically. So they integrate that back and forth. So that was nice, but you weren't able to generate that license plate for that inventory pick or that or print labels for that. So they had to do that on their own. Now that's out of the box. Also, we've done improvements for the V4 for the mobile app, and with that you can pick a color. There's advanced camera, so it's just a tighter, more secure reading of the barcode. It's faster. It's much more accurate as well. It improves performance. It also has network resilience on that. And this also has Wi-Fi diagnostics. So it's like, okay, warehouse can be huge, and if say there's certain spots where you have dead spots, you'll be able to actually see where that is. Also, you can record and view container line packaging details in app with that. So a few feature enhancements. I'm not going to go through a ton of these, but we enable calculation of the confirmed date from the vendor collaboration, so the earliest confirmed date. So that's a new feature. We remove the vendor from the RFQ bid after send or receive, so it doesn't include everything up. So it's like it just kind of drops off that list of we haven't received. Enhanced number pad control for shop floor execution, just to make it easier, more usable. For rebate processing, which can take a lot of processing power on that, we use multiple batch tasks, so it's going to save you some time on that. On GA, general availability, we've added some improvements on that. So this has a lot to do with the quality control as well. So we have approved customer list, or it's like an ACL. We've had the approved vendor list for many years. It's like, okay, vendors that we can actually purchase from, but on the customer side we didn't have that. So if you only sell certain goods to a Walmart or a Target or so on and so forth, that'll make sure that we restrict those to only those customers. We have advanced quality management in this. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but we have CAPA, corrective and preventative actions to take, or non-conformance. Optimized testing. We have skip lot within that. Instrument calibration. So if you have some limbs, instruments, you need to be calibrated every so on and so forth. Especially important for medical and hazardous materials on that. Electronic batch records, production dispensing, certificate of analysis per customer that they need, that are maybe bespoke or tailored to them. Electronic signatures, which is, we've had those before, but it's improved. A quick test entry, because it was kind of arduous with the old system. Now it's a quick entry to be able to get the testing on this. And there's a quality management workspace within that as well. Another feature on this is pair transfer. Pair the transfer order lines with the sales order lines. So if you have a sales order, it's got to be transferred over from one location, maybe a distributor, like a satellite warehouse, to a main distribution warehouse, and then sent out to the sales order. Sometimes it can get lost in there, or people actually get lost. So this is actually going to tag and peg that order and those materials to that sales order line directly onto that, instead of you having the system that. So it's not mistakenly going to be taken inadvertently from somebody. Electronic signature improvements. So this is for the CAPA management. Now this has been for 21 CFR 11 part 1 and 2. So that's actually for medical certification on that, medical device and pharmaceuticals on that. So the master batch record and the production records are all going to be managed under that and be controlled under that, and see what is so you have some visibility. We enabled foreign trade for all countries, and the last thing is dispense management. So you might have some thresholds. It's like, okay, you know, it has to be within. And then also any material that you're using for that, here's to return the remaining to inventory. Make sure you badge track that and where it's been tracked. We can restrict the dispensing to certain authorized workers, especially important for pharmaceutical or hazardous materials onto that. So it's like maybe only BART can do this, and Dan doesn't have that authority to be able to do that. And of course, that's integrated with electronic signature. So quite a bit on this 10.0.45, and I think I'm going to hold off on what's new in plan is supply chain for the next meeting. And of course, Bart, we always have what's new in the solution updates. So, look at your system and then make sure you update to the latest update on that.
Yes, there's a lot of them since it's been a month.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
Well, thanks for all those updates, Dan. There's lots going on out there.
There is. And it's only accelerating, it seems, Bart.
It seems that way. Well, we will plow through another couple of weeks and give everyone the updates that have happened in the fortnight since today, here in 2 weeks. So
all right, see you in 2 weeks. All right, take care, everybody. All right, Bart.